Let me tell you another question. You said on the day you launched your manifesto that it was legitimate and proper for people in England, to deny Labour and the Tories an overall majority, by which you were interpreting that they would vote for the Liberal Democrats. Let me cite two seats for you. Oxford East, Labour seat, Liberal Democrats second, the swing is 0.4. Edinburgh South, Labour seat, Liberal Democrats second, the swing to take is 0.5. Why would you say it's legitimate and proper in Oxford East? Presumably in Edinburgh South you'd vote SNP.
Well, obviously I want people in Scotland to vote SNP for Scotland, to have a great voice, and I think it's the best way to get that balanced parliament to allow the Scottish voice to be heard. So vote SNP in Scotland. I wasn't actually saying what the papers interpreted as far as England was concerned. I mean, the most likely result...
You did say it was legitimate and proper, didn't you?
I said it was legitimate and proper for people to look for a balanced parliament. That right now there's 500 or so seats in England.
And you talked about the Liberal Democrats in that context.
I didn't actually. I said I wasn't endorsing any of the parties.
You said you weren't endorsing them, you weren't actively encouraging it.
I'm about to come to the explanation. The reason I said what I said is this, that the most likely result of the election is a balanced parliament. The second possible result of the election is an overall Tory majority. And there may well be some seats in England where people who don't want an overall Tory majority, and I certainly don't want an overall Tory majority, will look at the particular position in their seat and vote accordingly. So you cannot judge in each individual seat how people should cast a vote. And I'm certainly not going to instruct people how to cast a vote, except I'm going to ask them in Scotland to back the SNP and the local and national champions who will do so much for our country.
Take that as read. But you need a hung or balanced parliament, as you call it, to exert the influence. To get that across the UK, it isn't just going to happen on Scottish seats, it needs to happen in England. That means that you need to have a whole pile of seats going Liberal Democrat, in which case...
Well, wait a minute, Brian, let's get this right. I mean, I think most people would say there is little or no chance of an overall Liberal Democrat majority, or indeed little or no chance of an overall Labour majority. I mean, I think it's 16 to 1. I mean, after the Prime Minister's remarks today, it's probably 100 to 1. So therefore, the two possible... This is very important. The two possible results arising out of the election are a balanced parliament, which is the favourite, or alternatively an overall Tory majority, which no sensible person in Scotland would see. So there might well be seats in England where people looking at their seat, wanting to deny the Conservatives the opportunity of an overall majority, would cast their votes as most appropriate in that seat. You and I possibly can't see.
And to peg back the two current big parties, that means seats for the Liberal Democrats. In which case...
it means depriving the Tories of the opportunity for an overall majority.
I get that. Doing which is the consequence of that is that the Liberal Democrats might pick up some seats.
Pick up some seats, but not in every seat.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. In which case... In which case, you currently... In the last election, you won 6 seats. You have 7 going into dissolution. They have more than 60. They have 10 times as many seats already. If they're going to pick up a few more, even a few more, under the scenario you're envisaging, they're going to be in a far, far better place to be influential in a hung parliament than you are. The Tories or Labour are going to say, you've got these Liberal Democrats with 60, 70, 80 seats, you've got the SNP with a dozen or even 20. Even at 20, it's only a third of the strength of the Liberal Democrats.
And remember our Celtic allies and Plaid Cymru and our joint agreement, of course. But can I just point to the Scottish Parliament for a very good example of why that logic doesn't pertain? In the first budget, the SNP have got more experience than anyone in these islands of running a balanced parliament.
Yeah, you've got experience of running a balanced parliament, not being the minor party.
Yes,
you'd be the equivalent of the Greens at Westminster.
Exactly. And what happened in the SNP's first budget as the majority party?
You ignored it?
No, our first budget.
Oh, that was the second budget you ignored.
Yes, because they put forward in that first budget a very ambitious, but nonetheless achievable plan, which we were able to support. And even in that context, in the Scottish Parliament, 2 Green MSPs were able to achieve a great deal because in a balanced parliament, if you've got clear objectives, if you know exactly what you're doing, then you can achieve a great deal. And in the same reason, a strong bloc of SNP and Plaid MPs could achieve a massive amount for Scotland and Wales in that next parliament. I agree, incidentally, that the bigger the bloc, the bigger the achievements.
Could you cut a deal with David Cameron, as reports are suggesting this morning?
No, there's no possibility of a coalition or a supply and confidence deal. It's just out of the question.
What about the sort of deal you have with the Tories at Holyrood, whereby they vote for your budget and you negotiate with them on a basis like that? Could you cut that deal with David Cameron?
Let's look at the Holyrood situation. And we've already spoken about the Greens. We cooperated with the Liberal Democrats to abolish tuition fees in Scotland. We cooperated with the Labour Party to deliver 20,000 modern apprenticeships this year. We cooperated with the Tory Party to get 1,000 extra police in the streets of Scotland. So, When you're running a minority administration, then you can look for support across a range of issues. Now, on your issue about the Tories, I think the Tories have put themselves in a ridiculous position. How on earth could anyone from Scotland give the Conservative Party support in a position where they are saying, as they are now, that they would rip up the funding formula without so much as a by your leave or consent from the Scottish people? Or for that matter, and let's look further than the SNP and Plaid Cymru, how do people in Northern Ireland feel about David Cameron doing an interview with your colleague, I forget his name, was it Paxman, where he said, what was it?
Very
let me
droll,
pick.
Mr. Salmond.
I'm sure Jeremy will think so. He said, let's pick Northern Ireland. And then he picked the north-east of Scotland.
Yeah.
I think people in Scotland
so you're saying
you
can't work with the Tories. You say there isn't going to be a Labour majority. There's not a lot of folk left, Mr. Salmond.
Well, the point about a balanced parliament, of course, is people are not just looking for your votes for something. They're trying to stop your votes against something. That is the great opportunity of a balanced parliament.
Does that mean you might threaten, for example, to vote on English issues only, which you currently don't do?
Well, as you rightly say, we currently haven't done that, but that is a card I want to keep up my sleeve, absolutely, because I want to maximise Scotland's influence in a balanced parliament. One thing I'd say, but we in Scotland should look at this debate that's taking place in the English tabloids about the dangers of a balanced parliament. We've had a balanced parliament, 10 years or more in Scotland. We've had a balanced minority government for the last 3 years, which I think most fair-minded observers would say has been a lot more stable than the majority government in the Labour Party south of the border.
To work as a small party in a balanced parliament, don't you need to be emollient? Don't you need to work with people? That's just not your style. I mean, you're a boss, not a beggar.
Well, luckily, it's Angus Robertson who leads the SNP.
Oh, you would stay out of it altogether? You would stand idly by? Would you just let it happen?
I'm not saying I'll stand idly by. I'm just saying who could be more reasonable than the estimable Angus Robertson.
You accept it's not you, it's not your role.
Oh, well, I remember fighting an election when you kept commentating on how reasonable I was coming across.
I must have been having an off day. Let's close with a couple of issues that I know it seems ridiculous almost to subsume them towards the end, but the economy and strategy was so big. The euro. Let me read out a quote from a politician speaking in the House of Commons, who was urging use of the euro and was talking about the impact upon Scotland and other regions. This politician said, the economies of those areas are being sacrificed on the altar of the problems in the southeast England property market. You recognise it, I'm sure.
Well, you're going to tell me.
Yourself in 2003.
I like the sacrifice.
Yourself in 2003 when Gordon Brown was ruling out the euro. You were a cheerleader then for the single European currency. Just as well you didn't get your way, given events later, isn't it?
Well, can I point out to you that there are problems in Greece at the present moment, which is a majority government, one of the few who has a similar level of financial difficulty in terms of scale to the United Kingdom. But I think the euro, through this financial crisis, has been quite a robust position.
Would you now seek to join, with an independent Scotland, seek to join on day one, I think one of your colleagues said?
I've always said when the economic conditions are right. And in particular, I think the balance of advantage just now, you would look at the economic conditions. We've always said you'd have to have a referendum of the people. But, given the world that we've seen over the last 2-3 years of spivs and speculators and rapid movements in share prices and people conspiring to wreck the economies of the entire world, I think the idea of not having currency speculation over and above that is a profoundly good one. And the reason, incidentally, in that speech I liked the euro so much was the lower interest rates that the euro had progressed and guaranteed over, decades.
Forgive me for moving on, but let me tell you another issue again for a reasonably short answer of you. Immigration. Are you still in favour of Scotland having an open-door policy to migrants?
I mean, I've never argued for an open-door policy. What I've said is that Scotland needs skilled people. And we've had a range of things agreed between the political parties in Scotland where people earn their citizenship. The New Scot scheme has been a profound success. And, where I disagree with the Westminster government is not the concept of earned citizenship, but, I mean, you're turning away skilled students, for example, or not allowing them to work in Scotland when they could do so much for our economy and to furnish jobs. And the second thing I disagree with is the tenor of the Westminster debate about immigration is so negative. When we've had generations of immigrants in Scotland from Ireland, from Poland, from Italy, from the subcontinent more recently, they're part of the fabric and nature of Scottish life, and we should celebrate that.
Alex Salmond, thank you very much indeed for joining us for this interview. Again, as I say, one of a series of interviews being done by the BBC, and thanks to you for watching at home. You can see the next in this series of interviews with the party leaders this Friday. It's Gordon Brown, 8:30 on BBC One. From me, toodaloo the new.